How's it going?
Awesome, awesome. So I was just, doing my rattling while we were waiting to find you, and people were asking, okay, well, what's the story about? I said, I don't know. He's going
Oh
to share.
yeah. So it's nothing like extravagant, it's just I think I'm just a normal person running through the ins and outs of life. I don't have any, you know, I haven't died and come back to life or anything like that. Um, a lot of lessons learned along the way, of course. But I can just start talking, or if you have questions, or what, I mean, how did you want to do
No,
it?
it's here's the thing: it's your story. What comes from the heart reaches the heart. Whatever you feel compelled to share, is
Yeah.
completely you.
So I grew up in a military family, moved around a lot, which I think helped me a lot with social skills. We had to learn how to get out there and talk to people and meet new people. Uh, but I grew up out west and moved south. Went to school. Met my now my ex-wife now at school. Um, got out of school, lived in Charleston, two beautiful kids. Life was great. It was fantastic. Everything I would have ever dreamed of, right? And then of course, things with the marriage start getting rocky. Um, and inevitably, we just failed to stay connected. And, through the ups and downs of having kids are a blessing, don't get me wrong, but it's a challenge and you have to, but you're doing the very best you can in the moment you can, right? And and so 10 years in, almost right at 10 years, we filed for divorce. And um, that really sent me to a dark place. I had never fathomed it, and I think what I inevitably learned was I just struggled feeling that I let my kids down, you know? And in reality, they're more resilient than we are, and that wasn't the case. But that's where my mindset was. Um, and at that moment, I kind of felt, I had to really look in the mirror and kind of hold myself accountable for why I was where I was, and that's the hardest part, is looking within and asking myself, well, how did I contribute to this? And um, I knew we had a great relationship, but just our communication sucked, and then that's why it failed. We failed to nurture the connection. And so for that moment, I just dug deep and I stayed away from dating. And I did a lot of work, a lot of internal work, and that's the hardest work to do because it makes you bring out your faults, your um, your behaviors, all along the way. Anything that you a lot of these things that you just ingrained from a child because of the way you were raised, and I didn't have toxic traits or behaviors, but there's things I needed to work on. And, it's funny. It was like, I didn't realize, and I was 40 at the moment we got divorced. And, uh, it was around 41, 42. I finally realized that I was looking at love entirely the wrong way, you know, um, where I was looking at more of the physical aspect of it. So there would be times where we would go to bed and I'd want to be intimate and she wouldn't want to be. And then I would take that as a stab, like, she's not, interested in me, or she's not uh, attracted to me anymore. In reality, that wasn't it. It's just our connection was gone, you know. And when you nurture that part, it's going to work. But we didn't, and we paid the price for it, of course. And I learned, like this is the biggest lesson I learned was, women don't need things. And yes, while the little things I liked, my love language is acts of service and little things. And if you haven't read the book, do. It's fantastic. Um, uh, what I realized was a woman wants to feel safe, right? And when she feels safe, she wants to connect. And when she wants to connect, everything else takes care of itself, right? And so I learned that through just working on myself, working through reading books, mental health, just everything there. And I finally opened my heart back up to a wonderful woman. It was a beautiful relationship. But again, I learned that everybody has their own shit they're dealing with, internally. And sometimes they don't know how to express that. Sometimes they do, right? But you have to understand that all these things around you and everybody in your life, you know, everybody has stuff going on. And one of the biggest lessons I've learned is to never take things uh, very personal when it comes to people around you and people being rude to you, the grocery store or wherever it may be. They're just having a bad day, just give them the benefit of the doubt. And, you know, you say it all the time with words, right? Words can make or break somebody's day. And rather than being reactive, and responding in ways where, two birds don't kill one stone. What's the saying?
Two birds with one stone.
Yeah, yeah. I've learned to to be reactive in a very patient and kind way, and versus saying something rude back. I would have done that as a younger person, but these days, I'll respond in ways where, hey, what can I do to help? And it looks like you're stressed out or whatever it may be, in those situations. But either way, going back to my story, I know I'm all over the place, but uh,
You're good.
she didn't have the capacity to be in our relationship at that moment, and this is 2.5 years into it, and when you've opened your heart back up after you've shut it down for a while, when you've had the walls up and you finally have been vulnerable enough to get back into the feels, and then to come back and have that news given to you, I shut down completely, and it's almost like you don't trust love anymore, and you don't trust anything out there, um, and so it makes you very, very shut off when it comes to those types of things, But again, I had to remind myself that people just have different capacities, right, in life, and um, you have to respect that, and it's unfortunate, right? Sometimes it's the right person in the wrong time, and I never found any truth to that until you actually experienced it, right? And so from that moment on, um, this was last summer, and uh, I was heartbroken, and uh, I turned to I was drinking um, a lot of vodka to kind of mask the pain I was going through because I'd already been through it once before, and I didn't want to do it again. And I became very anxious. Anxiety was kicking in, and I'm a very secure person when it comes to people, and so I recognized it, and I I recognized, I'm like, I got to stop. I've got to stop. The alcohol's not helping. I knew it wasn't, right? It's actually it's going the other way. And then uh, I started doing shadow work. And if you've never done shadow work, oh boy, it's a really, really eye-opening experience. Um, but it really, because it's all, honestly, it's the ultimate thing, mirror, because you're looking within, and really a lot of it goes back to our childhood, and how we were wired or raised. And I know a lot of people our age, um, we didn't have the resources as we do today. We didn't get to chat like this in front of people and give people advice and be positive to people. It was just, there was a book at the library. If I wanted to drive to the library to rent it, I would get it. But now you can get a book in a minute. And so, and in my situation, as men our age, I'm 45, growing up, the mindset was, suck it up. Boys don't cry. Boys don't have emotions. Suck it up and move on. And sure, in some cases, yeah, you have to suck it up, right? Still to this day. But there are cases where no, you need to process his emotions as kids and move forward, just so you knew how to process his emotions and regulate yourself down the line, right? And I see that, and I went through the whole shadow work, and I continue to do it every day, and I continue to try to grow every day. I think if you see yourself and you say, no, I think I'm good, I've learned everything, like, you couldn't be any more wrong, you know? Because if we're not growing every day, like, I really would, I want to be growing when I'm 80, I'm not sure if I want to live to be 80, but I plan on growing every day I'm on this earth, and whether it's just little lessons, just by watching, just by analyzing, by doing things myself. There's been days where I grow in a negative way too, where I've done something, but if I reflect back on it, that's growing. It's just my life hasn't been. I've been blessed to have beautiful kids, and with the important people that have come into my life, you have to look at it as not in a way that that didn't work out. They're out of my life now, but just be glad that it happened. Be grateful for the love you did share with somebody. Um, and to this day, my ex-wife and I think we have a gorgeous co-parenting relationship. And because I need her to be, I need her to be 100,000% for her, from when my kids are with her, right? We get 50-50. So if I'm sitting here going back to words, if I'm sitting here beating her up, analyzing things, picking apart things just because I'm angry because our marriage didn't work out, what am I doing? What's the point? What am I accomplishing? And, I make sure the kids give her Mother's Day gifts. I make sure, we do all that. So I want my kids to make sure they respect their mother, and you know when they ask the questions, I'm sure parents are, if they're watching, you've heard them. It's like, well, why did you and mommy, why? And the question, the answer I give them is like, look, it's like sometimes people just grow apart, and I apologize to them and say, I'm sorry that didn't work out, but we both love you very much, and we do a good job at that. We don't undermine each other, and but ever since I started doing shadow work, I realized, and I've always loved mental health, right? Um, I've always been, I feel like I've been called to it ever since 2018-ish, roughly. Um, so I am halfway to getting my master's in clinical health. So, and my goal is to help. Uh, I'd like to focus on divorced men um, who are struggling, in that aspect. when that initial year, that first year after a divorce, it's a rough one, you know. I felt alone. Um, Even when I had a lot of people around me, I felt alone. I didn't want to speak to people, but I want to normalize it, you know, to where it's cool to talk to people about it. And I think that's where we go wrong. And then the other part of it is I love kids, obviously, but I would love to focus on really that 10 to 15-year-old stage, you know, where these kids are, you know, my kids are in seventh and fifth grade. You know, they're kids at that age are not nice, you know. And so I've had to really up my game in the department of challenging them and getting them to understand when they're faced with certain situations how to react or how to, you know, speak. And you know, sometimes the way I tell them to talk to them, you know, it's an adult way, but they get it, right? And uh, you know, and I'm glad they do. Because I mean, one example was this morning. I was driving my daughter to school, and she was talking about a field trip they were on, and you know, and she's like, "Oh, we were on a field trip, and there was a private school there, and you know, my one of our kids in my class said, oh, there's the rich kids, you know." And she's like, well, they know they were rich because they had big houses. You knew one of them. I was like, well, that doesn't make them rich, right? What makes you rich? And she's like, oh, I know. She's like, loving each other, you know, all the values that I always teach, you know. So it makes me feel great that she's saying those things because she's listening, you know.
Mhm.
They're little sponges, but she's like, you know, family, the food we get on the table every day. That's what makes us rich, and you know, our health, etc. And so, yeah, so that's my goal moving forward is to take what I know, what I've learned, and hopefully instill it into, you know, people struggling, kids struggling, men struggling, anyone really, and uh, just keep encouraging like you do on a daily basis, you know. And that's where I'm at.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. It takes, well, you know, it takes courage, it takes strength to look inside when something doesn't work out and to want to change where you can or what you need to, and to look at the things that don't necessarily highlight uh, who you are deep down in your core. But when we highlight that stuff and we work it out, man, you what comes out of it is amazing.
it is. Yeah,
Like, everybody has a story. We say it all the time. Everybody has a story, and everybody has something to share. Nothing's too small. Nothing's too big. Just like what's going on around us and with people. Nothing is too big or too small to share. The more we open up, the more we communicate.
yeah.
Right?
And I'm not a vulnerable type, so you got me on this. Luckily, but you
Like,
know, I've known those are goals I'm setting to put myself out there more, and you know, this is part of that process. Um, and uh, it's you know, they say the richest place in the world is the graveyard, right? It's because people were too scared to do what they should have done, you know, or express what they wanted to express, invent the things they should have invented, sing the songs they were bound to sing, you know. And it's because I don't know if they're afraid to fail, you know, or afraid what people think, you know. That was always my problem. And you have to understand that you only get to do this once, and you know, like I said, fail forward, you know, enjoy your life and be vulnerable, put it out there, and when you go to your grave, smile knowing that you did everything you wanted to do. You know, start the business. You know, be start hosting podcasts on positivity, all the little things. And even though there's 5 people viewing this, there's not a million people in here. You starting it, right? And when you do that, it's just going to keep going that way, um, and you just got to stop worrying what people think, worrying what the outside thinks, and taking chances. But yeah, I don't have I don't have a super extraordinary story, but I think we all can connect on certain ways, and find ways to connect with other people. And if somebody connects with this story, reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk you through any type of roller coaster you're going through, because it is a roller coaster. I know you're going through it. It's an emotional, wave, and when you think you got it together, you don't. That wave comes crashing in, and then you just start all over. You're sputtering wet, and dry again, and then the wave comes back in. And but I think if we all figured out we're all in this together, the world would be a beautiful place, But unfortunately, our egos stand in the way of that, and if everybody could kill their egos, one time, I think the world would be a beautiful place. Rebirth,
Yeah.
but it takes work, and it takes looking in the mirror to do that, and that's the hardest part. And if you want a better life, and you want a really great life that's not draining, and just a simple positive life full of kindness, full of joy, full of laughter, full of love, and you're in a place now where you're drained, you have to look within, you have to look in the mirror, and you have to ask yourself, well, why? And you got to take the necessary steps. I mean, we could pray all we want, but you have to take action,
Yeah.
And don't live your life not wanting to take action, regretting not taking action. So that's where I'm at.
YOLO. You only live once.
Yeah. I've started businesses, and, I always knew I was good at certain things, but, uh, they've been working out, slow, slow is better than no, right? But there's a lot of life lessons every day you can find, whether it's in your kids, whether it's in going to the grocery store, whether it's, looking at your phone too long, being present. Uh, I have a I'm very hyper vigilant. I think I've told you that. I have a very bad, and it's an Achilles heel sometimes. Like when I go get coffee, sometimes at the coffee store, I'll sit there and I'll count how many people are actually talking to each other, and it's probably like 4 out of 30.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else is just, stuck to their phones, and it saddens me, and it's I wish people would connect more just by talking to each other and understanding each other. Um, that's one thing. I know the Masters started today, or it's Masters Week. I went to the Masters a few years ago, and they won't let you bring phones inside. And so nobody has phones. And so when you walk into the area where you buy all the goods and stuff, just everybody's talking. It's like, it's really great to see. I really enjoyed that. That was my favorite part of the Masters.
Yeah.
Everybody was just chatting with each other. But I wish we could get back to that in our society today. I know it's impossible, but But they're starting to put up. You're starting to see coffee shops that have that don't allow electronics. You're starting to see restaurants that'll give you discounts if you check your phone. So I appreciate those type of places trying to make it movement. Um, but I think we've just lost sense of ourselves in all of the technology that's come on, and uh, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I think we have to find the balance and when to put it down and be present with our kids and be present with each other. And um, I don't know what the answer to that is. Um, I saw an app where it makes you do push-ups in order to get back into your account. So I like that because
Yeah.
if you want, like, it gives you set a time limit for social media, and once you hit your time limit, it makes you do like 50 push-ups, and you got to put the camera in front of you
Yeah.
so it counts.
That's cool.
Yeah, but yeah, that's my biggest, I guess, what I don't care for in society today. You know, uh, that, and I think social media and accountability is what's killing us.
Mm.
People don't want to take accountability for their actions and their behaviors. They're always pointing fingers. Um, but that takes an ego death to get out of that mindset.
Yeah.
Um, and I think a lot of it, you have to understand, a lot of these people are the way they are because of the way they were taught by their parents, and their parents were taught by their parents. It's just a cycle. Until you break it, it's going to be, you're giving it to your kids too. But yeah,
Cheers to breaking the cycle.
yeah,
Cheers to giving back.
for
Cheers
sure.
to being part of the change
Yes,
and what you're doing.
yeah. I'm not going to be a millionaire by any means, but um, I've always, from a mindset, from a principle, I've always felt like if you are doing something you love, it's going to work out. It'll be rewarded. Um, so follow your passion. And even if it pays pennies on the dime to start with, like, you're going to find your groove and figure out where you belong within that passion. And when you love what you do, it's not a job.
Hmm.
So
Man. Got anything else for us? Are you?
no, I don't have anything. I talked too much already.
No, no, no. Thank you. Thank you again.
Yeah,
Thank you for
thanks for having
being.
me.
Thanks for what you bring. You in the morning. We talked about it the other day. Every time you pop in, I'm like, man, you have good energy. It's
Yeah,
just nice to be surrounded with people who want to keep giving back and people who are giving to each other.
for sure. Yeah,
So
I
thank
remind
you.
you of your brother, right? Was it your cousin?
Which one?
You said your cousin or your brother was a hippie, or was it
No.
a Grateful Dead guy, or?
Oh, it was my cousin. Yes, 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 yes. The picture when it
Yeah,
pops
yeah,
up.
yeah.
Yep. Which he is actually he's one of my angels. He passed away. mm, how many? 8 or 9 years ago.
Okay.
And so every time you come in, it's just this
Yeah.
this energy and even listening to you, at least listening to you talk right now, it's just uh, things that I know he wished he could have learned
Yeah,
to be more present and to be there and to be able to feel and experience and not feel like you're doing something wrong.
for sure.
we're human beings. We need to have an outlet. We need to have people to talk to share with, and uh, human connection.
Yeah,
Human connection is so important. That's why we're doing this.
absolutely, yeah.
Regardless of how you do it, even if it's um, create create a connection, and I'm really hoping that people do reach out to you and they do connect further, and you have so much to offer. You have so much to offer, and the fact that you want to give back is that's where you'll be rich. You said I
Yeah,
might not be a millionaire, but you might. But you
yeah,
might
right. Yeah,
because
that's
you are in your heart and in your mind.
yeah, and that's what that's the principles I try to teach the kids, and understanding that you know being wealthy doesn't involve money, right? Um, Now, to some people, it may, right? I don't see it that way, and I'm when I talk about the phones and being present, like I'm guilty. I promise you, I'm guilty on some days, right?
Mhm.
So I I'm not a know-it-all by any means, and I try to stay humble. And uh, I'm always working on it too. So, uh, but if I was my ideal self, like um, I would I would probably I would love to throw the phone away. To be honest with you, it feels like a leash sometimes.
Yeah.
The old days of I'll call you when I get home, or now it's just turned into why didn't you answer my phone call? I was like, so, but all the phones also in the text messaging. Don't get me started on that. But I could say hi to somebody and they could read it in 8 different tones, and all of a sudden they're mad at me. I'm like, what? I was just saying hello. So yeah, there's conversations that need to be not on text messages.
Agreed.
But I think a lot of people are afraid to have conflict and face conflict or face any type of conversation in person. So the text is an easy out for people. But I do think it helps them articulate what they want to say too, though. There's a double-edged sword there.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Agreed.
I appreciate you letting me share.
Yeah. No, God, I appreciate you letting me listen, and everybody else that had the opportunity to and will.
Yeah,
Uh, so if it's okay with you, then we'll end the video. I did put you'll get a copy of it in your folder. I didn't do that the first time, but we changed that. So you'll actually get a copy of the recording in your notifications, if you will.
yeah,
Then we'll we'll share to the page, and then I'll tag you if that's okay. That way, anybody who wants to reach out to you directly can.
that's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
cool.
Awesome. Thank you again.
Yeah, y'all enjoy your day, okay?
Yeah, do the same.
I will.
get outside.
All right,
All right, take care.
we'll talk to you.
Bye bye.